Welcome to Informed Politics and Beyond. I'm John Cronin, local election candidate for Reform in Southwark, in which I'm running in the Old Kent Road ward. Just a quick reminder, if you're watching on my YouTube channel, please, if you like our content, share it with your friends, etc. And most importantly, subscribe, click on the little bell, and you get notifications whenever we download content, so you never miss a show. Joining me today is the Baroness Claire Fox, who's been on the show before. Actually, you were my very first guest nearly a year ago.
There we go.
Now, during the London Assembly elections, the Baroness and the Bin Man.
That's the one.
It wasn't so much a show at the time, it was like a discussion. You can check it out on YouTube. We are today at the Royal National Hotel in Russell Square, where your latest Battle of Ideas event is taking place. You're one of the panel or speaker, and a discussion about the war in the Ukraine. So many political commentators predicted that Putin wouldn't invade Ukraine. The main topic that was brought up was, what would Russia get out of it in invading Ukraine? At the end of the day, they were proved wrong. What's troubling from my point of view, Putin has mentioned a number of times, why should the world exist if Russia doesn't exist? I think that's a very serious statement and should be taken very seriously. What's your take on that?
Well, I think that I was one of the commentators that thought he wouldn't invade, so I have no claim to any kind of foresight in relation to this. I was worried that the West were behaving in an irresponsible way in the way they dealt with Russia, particularly post the end of the Cold War, and I could see that there was a danger of kind of playing warmongering and it potentially provoking some reaction. But I have to say, I didn't expect a full-scale invasion, and I think that what we have to, from my point of view, having been involved in a fight for leaving the European Union, in a fight for borders, and in a fight for national self-determination and national sovereignty, that when any country, whoever it is, invades another country over their borders, denies their sovereignty and says it's going to destroy their self-determination, then I am obviously on Ukraine's side in this. It's not because I'm a great fan of Zelensky or anything like that. It's just simply that Russia are trying to destroy a sovereign state. Okay.
I mean, at the end of the day, these are ordinary people like you and me. They're caught up in political posturing or gamesmanship. They've lost everything and they've been driven out of their own country. I have a work colleague and friend who was in the Ukrainian army. He's still on their reserve list. So when this conflict started, he was very worried about it escalating and being called up. He's a family over here for over 10 years. So this situation is more far-reaching than people over here realise. He was relieved that the Orban took the stance that he did and that he allowed Ukrainians in, but that was it, basically. What are your views on this?
Well, I mean, I think that the one thing that you have to say is that, to everybody's surprise, and I think this includes the Ukrainian people themselves, they've risen to the challenge, haven't they? And I think that it wasn't clear at all that Russia wasn't going to just storm in and have great military success in a country that had not particularly been seen to be some, you know, as you say, ordinary men and women. We didn't know whether they were going to run away, flee, what was going to happen. It's extraordinary in terms of the bravery and the way that people have just said, we're not going to let this happen. And their lives have been, in some instances, destroyed, but they've also shown great leadership and so on. In terms of like where Ukrainians should go that are fleeing, and there are obviously entirely understandably millions are trying to get out, particularly women and children and vulnerable people, and that is in and of itself an indication that so many of the young men have stayed there to fight, but their families are trying to get out. Then I would like us to be as generous as we should be in the UK in terms of inviting them to come here. The government have said the right things, but their bureaucracy is so hopeless. The Home Office have proven to be not very good at sorting out the visas and so on. So we've got ourselves into a mess, which is an act of generosity has turned into an act of frustration because people can't get in even though they've been asked if they'd like to come here.
Because apparently there's so much red tape, isn't there? It's like you've got to know someone, you've got to know someone by name and all this kind of.
And also ridiculous, like what shows your papers, and it's obviously if you just fled the country, you know what I mean? Like you wouldn't necessarily pick up all of this sort of stuff, right? Rush. So it's ridiculous, right? And they just, you know, I do think there's a kind of jobs worth atmosphere that's happened across the civil service in some ways. They've also outsourced to companies, private companies that are doing this in Ukraine. And I do know that one of my colleagues, Jacob, when he went with his Ukrainian wife to pick up the children from that family who were in Poland, you know, there was ridiculous things like they were closing at 5 o'clock and closing at the weekend. This is the British visa area in the middle of a war. You do think, what is wrong with you?
I mean, at the end of the day, do you think that with you know, there's you know, they've got their own channels in Russia. You know, they've got their own agenda. They've got propaganda kind of thing. Like, they give their side of the thing. Do you think if the Russian people knew actually what was going on, do you think they would support Putin, or do you think he's just mad or bad?
I don't think that he's mad. I think that he's developed a narrative around Russian nationalism.
Right.
It's actually been supported by some people in the West as well. This idea that Ukraine is full of neo-Nazis, and undoubtedly there are neo-Nazi battalions in the Ukrainian army. That's not a lie. But the idea that Ukraine is a neo-Nazi state and that somehow this is a proxy war between America and Russia, I think is far-fetched. I think that a lot of Russian people, however, are denied information. It's the reason why we should be against all censorship. The fact that the Russian authorities want to ban any kind of information that doesn't fit in with their story is why we should be arguing for free speech all the time, because they should have the choice of finding out what's going on, making their own decisions. It wouldn't necessarily then, by the way, turn against Putin, but they'd be able to see what's the full story. But by the way, it's not very good when in the West we also ban things like Russia Today, or we actually don't trust people in the UK to find out what the Russian story is as well, because you should be able to say, watch Russia Today. Doesn't mean you have to believe everything in it, the opposite, but it's good to know what the enemy thinks for a start-up. And certainly, I think that censorship, wherever it is, and just today, in fact, as we're filming, it's just been announced that Russian and Belarusian tennis players are going to be barred from taking part in Wimbledon, and that seems to me to be completely ridiculous. They're not a Russian team, they're Russian individuals, and I think that just smacks of a lack of confidence on our part that we're punishing individual Russians like that. That's not the basis on which a liberal democracy should behave.
Of course. Right, as you know, I'm running in the local elections, and there's a number of issues there. Well, one of them seems to be number of issues like the cladding scandal, which you've been very vocal on in the Lords. Do you think that Michael Gove is doing enough to remedy the situation at the moment?
So I was at a demonstration, a rally outside the Lords today. Actually.
That's why I mentioned it.
And I know that you've also been involved in trying to follow this issue carefully in Southwark, and I'm glad that you are. And one of the things that was interesting was that there was politicians from all the political parties there today. And it's interesting because I know that when you and I started talking about it, it was not quite so popular.
No.
And to give credit to the Lib Dems, they've been very strong on it. But Labour have been less so. But there was Tory backbenchers, people from the Labour Party and the Lib Dems and independents today. Do I think that the bill is good enough? No, not at all. I mean, there's real problems. So what's happened is that the building safety bill has actually been much improved because of the activists and the grassroots, but there's still huge problems, like buildings under 11 metres are still being treated as though they're a fire risk by the freeholders, so the leaseholders still have to pay, but the government don't count under 11 metres as something that they'll compensate leaseholders for. There's non-cladding remediation. There's all sorts of difficulties when it comes to getting insurance for housing because of this whole issue. And then there's also I know Southwark have done this, which is they're basically demanding that they get in people's homes to inspect walls.
Yes.
It's really quite intrusive. And they're basically behaving as though the only thing that matters is safety, 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 in a way that we saw during COVID. And I think that what I said today at the demo was, if you say safety is the only thing you're going to think about, you're going to end up like Shanghai, where you say, in the name of safety, you're going to lock everyone in their houses and starve them to death. We're going to have lockdown fever. And I think you can say that we want safe housing to live in, but it's not just that every flat is about to go up in flames. We also need to have a sense of proportionality and common sense. So I hope you take that message into Southwark too.
Yeah, of course. I think you're aware of the group APUR, the report that they done on rooftop developments.
Yeah.
And the dangers of it. Apparently, it's been alleged that the council have not let residents know of these buildings that are affected. So the repercussions could be quite
serious for people. And I think that one of the things that you've, I know, been very strong on when you've stood before, and I know it's part of what you think is, what your kind of message is that local democracy should be about knowing as much as possible.
Should be more transparent.
More transparent. All of this information should be in the public square,
for
good or for bad.
Yes.
People should be debating it and discussing it, and I hope that that's a message you can take in the local council elections, and that's one of the things. So maybe these rooftop developments are not bad. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe we could say if the council told people that they'd like it, or they wouldn't be worried about it. But if you try and hide things from people,
exactly,
then it goes bad.
I mean, the people who've done this report are obviously experts in their field, so that must carry quite a lot of weight,
Yeah, but also it's up to local residents to know all this,
they
should be part of that conversation. If it affects their homes, they need to be part of a discussion.
I mean, like for insurance, for example.
Exactly.
It could be uninsurable if these things are true,
I know, and they need to know so that they can decide whether they're going to campaign against it, what they're going to do about it. And I do think that I do want to give some credit to Michael Gove and actually to Stephen Greenhalgh in the House of Lords, which is they have actually listened to a lot of the complaints from leaseholders. There has been some positive changes. I'm not one for being soft on the Tories, God knows. But what I'm saying is every council should be informing leaseholders of exactly what's happening, every housing association, every freeholder, so that if there is an issue, they can, as it were, lobby Michael Gove, lobby the government, say, look, this is going to cause us real problems.
I mean, at the end of the day, well, what I seem to be getting all the time when consultations come up from the council, the reaction I seem to get from people is that, the council have made their mind up already, it's not worth me giving my opinion. That's not the way it should be. Yeah, I mean, they already made their mind up, they're going to do this anyway. That shouldn't be the way. I think people's opinions should carry some weight, they should count, and they should be considered fairly, instead of, they think that their views are not valued.
And it's terrible because people then become cynical about politics, and they think there's no point voting for anyone, because what's the point, because it's all decided in advance. And I think we've all got to argue against that fatalism in a way and say, no, we've got to make our voices heard. And what I'm saying about the leaseholder struggle and the cladding issue is that actually the government had a very particular way of dealing with this, and it was because of the grassroots campaigners that they changed their mind. So it does work to be active and to keep shouting louder and to make your voices heard, because you can have an influence. I
mean, what I have noticed, I've been against LTNs for a long time.
Yeah.
In the Labour manifesto, they haven't mentioned LTNs once.
No.
Yet they've made the ones that are in the borough already permanent. And I've seen in other boroughs, it seems like there's signs there in other areas of the borough that they're thinking of doing the same in there. So basically, if they get voted in again, they'll probably see this as an endorsement that they were doing right, and people are not aware because they haven't put it in their manifesto. They haven't been up front with people.
I think that one of the most disconcerting things about particularly Labour controlled councils is that they always behave as though they know best. And they think that what they're doing is, we know what's best for you.
Yes.
So they would say, oh, well, we have to do this because actually this is what's for you, the best situation in terms of reducing traffic or encouraging you to cycle or walk, or any of these things that they use as excuses feeds into net zero and all of these arguments.
And the irony is these people do not have to put up with the consequences of their actions.
Exactly, but also if they were so confident about it as a policy, it should be the thing they're boasting about in their manifesto materials in local councils. They should be saying, we are the pro-LTN Labour Party, support us because we support LTNs everywhere you look. And the thing is, they don't trust citizens enough to do that because they know that they're not that popular. They know that, therefore, if they actually boast about it, they might lose some votes.
Oh, yeah. They don't like facing the public.
No, exactly.
Okay, what else? That's it really. What would you like to bring up about your next events coming up? Battle of Ideas.
Well, I mean, actually, I'd like to say something about the local elections as well.
Okay.
Which is,
No problem.
I know that you're standing, you've got your leaflet there, but in all seriousness, the Battle of Ideas Festival, the big festival, is in October, 15th and 16th of October, and I know that yourself and Leslie and your colleagues will be coming along, and
Yes.
there'll be a Reform Party stall again, I hope, and also you'll be filming people and interviewing them.
Yeah.
But there's a long time between now and October,
Of
and there's
course.
so many things to talk about. There's so much happening in the world. We haven't even touched on the cost of living crisis.
Yes, if you
that's-
want to talk about that, we
well,
can.
well, just only briefly to say that
Yes.
I hope that things like local elections coming up in May, I hope that people will be saying to anyone who's standing, what do you think about the net zero crisis? Do you think, net zero, the cost of living crisis, do you think net zero should be abolished as an objective, because that's one of the things that's leading to energy prices being hiked up, so frightening for so many people, really scary times in terms of economic development. What kind of job programs have you got? And I hope that they'll also be saying things to you that are very controversial, like, for example, can you define what a woman is? Do you think a woman's got a penis? I know that these are controversial matters, but I think it's really important that politicians are asked awkward questions. And so I hope that by the time we get to the Battle of Ideas in October, that you've had a successful election campaign before then, John.
And I've noticed that they haven't brought up as well, which is a very important issue, the amount of empty homes in the borough.
Right.
And that has not really been addressed. Apparently, they haven't used their powers in about 5 years. I mean, the irony of it, 2 doors away from me in my block of flats, it's been empty for well over 3 years.
My goodness.
And no one, surely these things are easy to check, like, oh, have they received council tax or have any correspondence? They should check these properties out. Apparently there's thousands in the borough, and yet there's people in temporary accommodation. That could move in tomorrow.
Yeah, so basically, if you got elected as a councillor, that would be one of your
Oh,
priorities.
that'll be one of my priorities,
one
of
of
course.
your top things. And,
Oh, yeah.
and I think that you're right. I mean, people will say things like it's overcrowded, we've got no room for Ukrainian
Yeah,
refugees,
you've
or
got
whatever, but
empty
actually you've got
properties.
empty properties.
Yeah.
And then you've got, as we know, homeless people, ever-increasing numbers of homeless people, people living in dire conditions, a lot of ex-veterans in that situation. So I think that if you could say that the one thing you're going to do is count up the number of empty properties in your borough,
Of
and then
course.
start saying, right, we're going to now make sure that people who haven't got homes can live in those
It's not the
properties.
point.
That'd
People
be
should
great.
live like that. Yeah, of course. They should have if the homes are there, they should be housed, of course. Well, thank you very much, Claire.
Thank you, it's always a
Thank you.
pleasure.
Yeah,
Good luck.
Thank you very
I
much.
hope it goes well.
Just a quick reminder, if you like our content, please like, share, and most importantly, subscribe. Remember to press the little bell when you subscribe so you get notifications any time we download content and you never miss a show. Thank you very much, and look
Thank you,
forward
John.
to seeing you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.